Explorers, and welcome to another video. Today we are going to talk about Windows 11 and an automated install where you don't need to add anything, you don't need to put any buttons or anything. You start a script and it will install the Windows installation for you. So let's switch over to my screen here, and here we have a normal Windows 11 install with the start button down here. And if we open it up, it's clear that we don't really have all the applications. It has been now hidden under this all tag here, and here we have all the applications installed. This is a little bit of a smaller installation. This is more useful for installations where you want to run something perhaps like a server or perhaps dedicated for a specific task. So you have the Microsoft Store here and so on, but you don't have Edge, and there is a bunch of things that are missing in this installation, but at least it is small. So usually you require a lot of memory, a lot of CPU and so on, but this is actually running on 2 CPUs, 2 gigabytes of memory, and on a 20 gigabyte hard drive, and we are only using up 10 gigabytes of the space so far. And we can do updates, so we can upgrade this if we want to. So this is the end result, a tiny Windows 11 installation with all the bells and whistles of the Windows installation and none of the extra craft. And this was something that I found on the internet like a year ago, but I didn't really find a use for it or had anything that I needed it for, so I put it off for a long while. And now I don't really have a use for it either, but I know that there is people out there that are required by work to install a bunch of Windows installations, and this could be a way of doing it. So let's close this machine down here. Let's power it off and switch over to the manager over here, and we will delete this as well so we don't have this extra installation. And let's look at what we did here. So first off, you need to download a fresh installation of the Windows 11 ISO. It's available as a software download. You just need to click a bunch of the different things and get it. And then you will get it down, this ISO image, and you need to mount it in your installation. So if we go over to my build machine over here, it's already mounted. So if I open up the Internet Explorer or the File Explorer in Windows, we can see here that I have it mounted as a drive. I can eject it down here, and then we find it here. I have the Windows 11 24H2 English X 64, which was the latest one that I got downloaded. And what we do here is just choose in the right click menu, Mount, and then it will show up as an extra drive here, drive E. So now we have mounted it. Let's look back at our script again here. Next up, we're gonna download and install Git on the machine. So it's just the download to the Windows machine and installing as a normal installer. Then we can clone this Git repository here. So NTDev Labs NTDev is a developer that has been working with this tiny install for a long while. There are ISO images available on archive.org that he has built, or she, but this is the actual GitHub repository with their script. So we will download this and cd into this directory. Now that we are in this directory, we have a couple of files. So in my tiny builder here, we see that we have an autounattended XML, we have a null file, we have some tooling down here, and we have 2 scripts. We have the Tiny11 core maker, and we have the Tiny11 maker. We're going to use the Tiny11 maker. It will have less installed, but it's the real script that actually creates stuff. But before we do that, we need to have this unattended install, and there is one package with it That is just fine. It has less of the installation scripts and so on, but it doesn't do a full attended install. You need to supply a bunch of stuff. And I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to have an install where I could just start a script, go away, and when I come back, I have an installed Windows. So what I did, I found this shenanigans web page. So if we go over here we have the generate auto unattended Windows 11 script. And here you can first off select your display language, your keyboard language, and then the processor architecture that you want to install. You can say that you don't want to do the TPM secure boot requirement check. I still add the TPM and secure boot. So we will look at that later, but you can bypass it here and run without it. Allow Windows 11 to install without internet connection. Use a distributed share configuration set. So then you can put a bunch of things in this OEM directory where you can install even more things if you want. Then we want to create a random name for this Windows installation. You can give it a specific name if you want as well. And then you can update that script and you can have a bunch of different install images if you want. And we can also then see if we want to have a compact OS or you can use a compact OS. And then we have the time zone. I wanted it to choose that from the time and region that I had. We can go and say if we want to do a full system wipe and what kind of install we want. In my case, I went with a GPT and then a UEFI drive of 300 megabytes. And then I also removed the recovery drive. That is something that you want perhaps to have as a separate installation or something like that. So there's a bunch of settings here. I want to have just a generic product key for Pro, and you could set a particular product key here, but if you choose this generic one, then later on you can change it in Windows and actually activate it for real. And then we have some administrators here and a user. I just give them a QWERTY password for now, change that later. And we want to log on to the administrator as the first thing we do. So it will do a login and run all the extra scripts. I don't want the passwords to expire. Use the default policy for login. So 10 failed login attempts will lock you out for 10 minutes. That's fine. Show all files. I love that kind of settings. Always show extensions. That is something I need as well. Use the classic right-click menu. I don't want the extra hiding of functionality. Give me everything. Open File Explorer on this PC instead of quick access. And then we have, if we want to have the search icon or just hide the search, is my preference. And I will want to remove all the taskbar icons. I want to display all the widgets. Disable all the widgets. I want to left align the taskbar, of course. And I want to hide the taskbar view button from the taskbar. Always show tray icons. That is something that I really don't understand why you want to hide them. Don't show Bing results when you search. Remove all tiles. If you have a Windows 10 install, in a Windows 11, remove all pins because you want to set your own pins, what you actually want to have there. You could also go in and give a particular pin list if you want. These things should be in the installation. And then you can disable a bunch of things here, like in Windows Update and Defender and so on. I don't see why you want to do that, because that will hamper the way you use your Linux. Enable long paths could be something that you could enable here. Prevent Windows from Windows Update from rebooting your computer. That is extremely important for me. I don't want it to restart ever. And I haven't been able to test this to see that it doesn't restart. But while my testing previous, I ran an install and then went to sleep. And when I came back, it had restarted. So even though I just had done a fresh install, it had restarted. And if you are running major scripts and big kind of operations, you don't want it to restart when you don't when you are running stuff, of course. Turn off system sounds. I don't really like those. Hide Edge first run experience. In this case, it doesn't even install Edge because that is removed from the other script. Delete the empty Windows old folder if there is one. Adjust the visual effects to best performance. That is what I really like to use. Show default desktop icons, or you can choose a particular set if you want. I wanted it to install VirtualBox guest editions. It didn't do that. Doesn't really matter. It would have been nice if it did, because then you would get the right resolution when you are using it later on. Skip the Wi-Fi configuration. I don't need a Wi-Fi, but you could set up a particular Wi-Fi if we want. Express settings, disable all diagnostic data. You can enable all or choose a particular set if you want. Default lock key states. You can change that if you want. You can set a particular color scheme. You can set wallpapers if you want. And then you can remove all the bloatware. So here you can select a bunch of things that you want to remove. And later on you also have a couple of scripts that you can run for hibernating or different things that you want to be running on the machine. And you also can have a bunch of default scripts to run as a default user. So this is where you can, as a sys administrator, add a bunch of things that could be running on the machine when it boots to make it secure or whatever you need. And then you have the VDCAC policy. You can set that. I don't need that for my installations, but of course you can add that if you want. And then you have also more things that you can add down here. But when you're done and have set all of this, you just need to download this XML file and you can start installing. What I tried to do first was to write my own XML file. I was looking for a documentation out there, and I would say that it's very sparse. It's extremely hard to find any documentation around this format, which is very strange, I think. So I'm really appreciative of this Shenanigans DE that they have created this generator, because writing this by hand when there is no documentation is a little bit annoying. So next up, when we have fixed that, we can go in and add this extra thing to my script here. So I added a shutdown command on the first boot. So if we switch over to this screen here and look at the editor here, we can see that this is the script that the Shenanigans put out. And a bit down here, we have the run script. So here I added in order to, so the first order is running some first login script, which will remove a bunch of things. And then I run this shutdown command. And the reason I do that is if I wanted to set up 5 different tiny builds of Windows because I wanted to run a cluster or anything like that and wanted to prepare them in sequence, I want the script to end, shut down, and then start the next one. So that's why I added a shutdown here. You could of course skip this step if you don't need that particular extra functionality. Next up, I also needed to do a little bit of a change to the Tiny Maker script. And this is because when you start it up, you get the question, do you want to install this? Press any key to load the CD or DVD. And that is just not the prompt that I want. And after digging around a bunch, I found on Reddit somebody actually had a solution for this. So this is a Reddit thread here. There was a bunch of different, so this press any key to boot from CD or DVD. And there was a bunch of suggestions here that was wrong. But in the bottom here, 2 months ago, False Engineer 314 gave the suggestion, why not just go to the EFI Microsoft boot directory and remove the FESys and CD boot FE and replace them with this no prompt instead. So that's what I did. But I needed to put it into my script so it actually was doing that while running. So if we look here, we have remove item, the FESys bin, force, and then we will, on the scratch disk, rename this FE no prompt to FESys. And the same goes for CD boot no prompt to CD boot. And we also had some other suggestions that this bootfix bin should be removed. It's when you are running a normal BIOS and installing without UEFI, it will use this in order to install. But of course, this image will not install without UEFI, so I'm not really sure why. I don't think this does anything for me, but I added it here so you could install it. This is something that you need to add to the PS1 script somewhere before the removal is complete here, right host removal complete. So after this OneDrive setup removal, you can add these lines, remove item, and rename item, remove item, rename item, remove item. So I added it to my script here. And when that is done, we can pretty much run it. So we need to set the execution policy of unrestricted. We need to run PowerShell as superadmin, and then we can run our tiny script. So let's go here, go to this PowerShell. It's running as superadmin on this machine, and then I will run tiny maker. The first thing is asked for, where did you mount your installation? So it's mounted on the E drive on this system. So if we go back to the script here, I will press E, and then it will copy the full Windows image from that DVD drive to your local drive in order to prepare for adding, removing, and changing things in that scrap directory. And one thing that I did from the beginning here was that I looked at this scratch dir where they removed the OneDrive setup file, and I thought that's where I need to add things. But it actually does two different installations. So the Tiny 11 one is the one that is actually packaged as the drive. So this Tiny 11 will later on become the Tiny 11 ISO. So that's where I need to remove these boot script. I did it in the scratch there first, and it did no change. So I'm not sure why they are using two different directories, but that's one thing to keep in mind. And then you get a list here of all the different images you could do. You could do home, home N, single language, education, pro, and so on. So what I chose is number 6, pro, and then the process starts, and I will not get any more questions later on here. It will run through the full script and create an ISO. And so I don't think we need to look at this. It will take a long while before it's done. Let's go over to the installation guide again. So next up, when we have this tiny ISO here, we will need to run this script. So this script is something that I have curated and created in order to install Windows installation. I take an inspiration from how I install Debian, but I changed a couple of things. So first off, this is a bin bash script. We will run vbox manage a bunch of different times. And first we create a VM, give it a name, and I have a script where I give the first parameter as the name of the thing I want to install. So if we go over to my command line here, I've done this a bunch of times. I started at a tiny 11, so now we are at tiny 27. So let's do that. We see that it creates a drive, and then it's start this installation process, and it will be running for a while. So we will come back to that later on, and let's continue with the script here. So after we have done the name, we will set an OS type. In this case, it's a Windows 11 64-bit. And this you can find if you're listing the available OS types. There is a command for that. And then you need to register this, and that will create a VM. Then we need to modify this VM to add a bunch of extra things. So we will add 2 CPUs to it, 2 gigabytes of memory. We will turn off PAE, and that's because UEFI and TPM can't run with PAE. It just crashes for some reason. I added this long mode. I turned off the audio driver. I don't need audio in any of my installations. I will run them as servers pretty much. Next up, we set the firmware, FE32 or FE64 if you want. Then we will set the TPM type. This could be none if you don't want to have TPM. 2.0 or 1.2, I believe is the options you have here. I want the clipboard mode to be bi-directional, so I can actually clip and copy-paste between my different environments, the host and the guest. I use a bridge adapter of Eno 1, and this NIC should be bridged, of course. And then I set extra data. So this is the variable that you need to set to get secure boot set in your environment. It did not set the secure boot if the PIE was on. So that's the connection between those two. Next up, I will create a fixed size to a 20 gigabyte disk here on my system. And I will use storage control to set the SATA controller and add SATA. And then I use the Intel AHCI for that. Next up, we attach that storage to the SATA controller, this particular VDI file. And then I will create another IDE controller, add IDE, PXIIX4, and then I will attach the current ISO image to that DVD drive. Next up, I choose the boot order. So first we want to boot on from the DVD and then from the disk. And then I can start the VM and it will start the installation process. So if we go back to our installation here, we see that it has gone all the way to installing Windows 11 and it's 53% complete. This will take a while to run, so I don't think we need to wait for it to complete. You saw the completed image. It will run, it will stop and shut down after it's done, and then I can install one more if I want. So this was what I wanted to cover today. I hope that you found this interesting. I hope that you learned something today. If you like this video, give it a like, share it with your friends and colleagues. If you want to support the channel, there is a donation link and also affiliate links in the description down below. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. If you have any comments or suggestions, leave those in the comment section down below. And I really hope to see you in the next video.